Welcome back to Horns High Studios for another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder. That means each one of these videos is less than 666 seconds or 11 minutes and 6 seconds. So no time to waste here. Let's get down to business. Don't forget, though, to like this video. Take a moment, do that, and drop a comment below. It really helps get the word out to everybody else that likes true crime like you do. If you're not a subscriber, consider doing that by the end of the video. I sure appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. Now, it's important to remember that with my videos, these are for informational purposes only. These are just my opinions and speculation. I am not an expert. I'm just using good common sense to talk about a case that interests us. I'm not saying anybody's guilty of anything, and everything I say is alleged. Now, for this episode, I'd like to talk about something that centers around the crime scene investigation in the Idaho 4 case. Now, I recently did a True Crime Deep Cuts episode on this. I interviewed a former Australian federal police officer about how law enforcement processed this scene and some of the issues that he felt were concerning, and there were a lot of them. We got into the touch DNA evidence and some of the problems with that. The viewer comments for that video were really great, very positive. Loved the interaction with Mick, the former police officer. Broke things down in very simple to understand terms, which I think is great. And I'll link to that in the episode description if you missed that. But I wanted to do a shorter video on this since I know not everybody likes the longer form videos. I get it. Now, none of us were in the house that morning to know exactly what happened when they processed this scene. None of us, were there. And all we have are things from the PCA, maybe some of the press conference stuff in the beginning. Now, of course, there is so much rumor going on in this case because of that gag order that it's very hard to discern from fact or fiction. Now, my biggest concern in this case, when it comes to the crime scene, is how many people were there when Moscow PD showed up at about noon that day. Were they thoroughly questioned? Did they take fingerprints, shoe impressions, examine them for injuries to their hands, their arms, their face? They get any DNA? Did they do any of this stuff? I have absolutely no idea. Do they even have a log of everyone that was there with some identification and that sort of thing? I have my concerns that that was not done. Is that why they didn't release the 911 call? They said in a press conference that the phone was passed around when they talked to the 911 dispatcher. So who is on that recording? And who is on there that they don't want us to know about? Very, very strange. I also find it strange that Brett Payne was assigned as the lead investigator from the Moscow PD. At that time, he only had 2 years on the job. Prior to that, he was an MP in the Army, but I have no idea what sort of experience he had doing that job. I do commend him for his service. He was deployed at least once into a combat zone. So I know that, he's served, and I appreciate that. I'm a fellow veteran myself. I know at Moscow, though, he never investigated any murders. Well, we know that Moscow PD likes to call murders accidents, though. So, tomato, I guess, with them. But I covered this in the case of Hudson Lindau and some others. So if you want to check that out, I've done other videos on them. I also find it odd that he showed up at 4 p.m. with Sergeant Blaker to start the investigation. That's 12 hours from after the crimes happened, if you believe their timeline. Personally, I think it was more like 13 or 14 hours. Most detectives are on a scene of a homicide within an hour. So what was he doing? Was he out of town and maybe off that day? I mean, that's certainly possible. Or was he at an Army surplus store buying a K-bar knife and putting some skin cells on it in his car? I don't know, okay? I don't know, but it does make me wonder, what was he doing? There are also the questions about Coroner Kathy Babbitt and her arrival at 5 or 5:30 p.m. Doesn't the coroner pronounce the victims dead? I mean, so why was she not in there right away, right after they showed up at noon? Why didn't she show up then? I don't understand that. She said she didn't want to get in their way, but nobody showed up to investigate until 4. So there was 4 hours where they were, I was assuming, just secured the scene and nobody went in. I don't know why she couldn't have gone in then. It's very strange. I have many suspicions about this whole situation because she said the crimes happened between 2 and 3 a.m. originally. Then, of course, that changed in the PCA to 4 to 4:25 a.m. So I have many, many suspicions about that. And I, think that what they did was they found a white car on a couple different traffic cams. Whether it's the same car, who knows? I doubt very seriously that it's Brian Kohberger's car, but nonetheless, they saw that, and then they built their case around that and adjusted their timeline to fit the story. That's my personal opinion. Now, I also think personally that Etha and Xana were attacked just after 2 a.m., and that maybe the attackers hid in Xana's room, waited for Kaylee and Maddie to come home. Then the girls heard noises downstairs, and others were brought in maybe for a second attack. And that's when they started calling Jack when they heard all the noise downstairs. We know the call stopped at 2:52. And I think that that's when everything happened up on the 3rd floor. And I think the 4 people running across the band field at 3:12 were part of the crimes. But I do not think that it was just those 4. I think there were many involved. And I am planning on doing an updated video of a theory I've got, kind of expanding upon my original Lambs to the Slaughter video I did a month or 2 ago. Now, another thing I heard from a detective with many years of experience is that the cars in the parking lot should have been processed immediately and then towed to the police department for further inspection. They were still there 2 weeks after the crimes happened. There could have been evidence in or on them. Maybe he touched or somebody touched one of the cars. Could have got some good fingerprints. I've also heard from someone that it is alleged that a car belonging to Hunter Chapin was parked on the street in front of the house. What was that about? Kind of looking into that. I've had some questions about the Chapins, but I'm not done with that yet. In addition, what about the glove that was found on the sidewalk by a YouTuber who was there at the scene a couple of weeks after the crimes? How did the police miss something like that? How does that even happen on a crime of this magnitude? It had an unknown male DNA on it, but just like the 2 samples inside, far as we know, they haven't been analyzed. And I think that absolutely blows my mind. How those have not been analyzed. And so do they actually know who it is and they just don't want us to know? Or was Bill Thompson telling the truth that he doesn't have the lab results back from that? Because that's absurd. Detective Lawrence Mowry from the Moscow PD is the one who analyzed the digital evidence in this case. I don't know what his credentials are and how they stack up against Cy Ray, the defense expert, but we'll see. I don't know anything about Detective Mowry. I'm not going to say anything bad about the guy. I'm sure he got some help from the FBI, but I personally think Cy Ray is going to make all of them look really stupid when he proves that Brian Kohberger wasn't even in the state of Idaho that night or early morning. I know I'm biased here, but that's how I feel about it. Now, am I accusing the Moscow PD, the Idaho State Police, and the FBI of corroborating this master plan to frame an innocent person? No. But what I am saying is it's very possible that a few well-placed corrupt police officers in this investigation may have had their own agenda, and they were the ones that put the patsy on the chopping block, so to speak. I do feel something like that is going on here. I, of course, have no proof, but I have common sense. And that DNA on that brass button snap should have only lasted a few hours, not 12, not 13, and certainly not 14 hours. That's for sure. I'm not buying it. But why would they do this? I really have no idea, but they need to explain themselves when this trial starts, because I want to see their work, okay? I mean, if they were part of some nefarious stuff, then they should be in a cell at the Latah County Jail as well. Now, we know that selling substances is a huge money industry, and that's why so many criminals gravitate to it. It's easy money. But with all that money, police are often bribed to help keep things going along as usual. Business coming in. If any of the police officers here were on the take and they're there to keep that money coming in, that would definitely give them an incentive to get this thing figured out quick and divert the eyes upon the people that really did this. Plus, we know that the University of Idaho and Scott Green was stomping his feet in those police meetings in the early days. So that's how I feel about this. Now, don't miss my next live on this channel. That's Sunday, April 28th, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Central. I'll be talking all Idaho 4, answering your questions. And the one from this past Sunday went really well. So we're going to hopefully have a lot of fun again. I really appreciate the turnout. You guys are awesome. But let me know down below in the comments, what do you guys think about this one? I want to say thank you to my friends at the Horns Eye Club. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate your support very much. But I appreciate all of you guys and your support watching these videos. And we'll see you next time for another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder.